Okay. Good evening. I am Nancy Burrows, and I'm the Voter Service Chair of the League of Women Voters of South Kingstown and Narragansett. On behalf of the League, I would like to welcome you to our first Meet the Candidates Night for 2014. I would especially like to welcome members of the audience here at Narragansett Town Hall, the candidates for Senate Districts 35, 36, 37, and 38, who are appearing now, and the candidates for House Districts 33, 34, 35, and 36, who will be appearing at 8 p.m. Also, our viewers on Cox Channel 17 and Verizon Channel 28. Democracy is not a spectator sport, and one of the most important duties we have as citizens is to learn about the issues and candidates so we can make informed choices. If you find a forum like this is an essential part of your election season, consider joining the League to help us provide nonpartisan voter education and to advocate for good government. Despite its name, the League is open to both men and women. There are membership materials on the table by the door along with other voter information. We are here tonight to ask questions of the candidates and to listen to their responses. So please hold your applause and refrain from reacting to the candidates' answers. This is a nonpartisan forum, and as much as I applaud voter interest and enthusiasm, I ask that you listen respectfully to all candidates as they discuss issues important to the future of Rhode Island. I would like to thank many people for helping with this forum. The League of Women Voters Rhode Island Education Fund for providing funding, the Town of Narragansett for the use of the Town Hall, and the town staff for their help and cooperation. Members of the local League of Women Voters who have worked on planning this event, the Westerly Peg Access Studio for handling the live broadcast and frequent rebroadcast of this forum, the South Kingstown Independent, which helped gather questions from the public, is live tweeting tonight and will post the video of the forum on their website. Last, but by no means least, I would like to particularly welcome and thank our moderator, Dr. Fran Alexakos. Now to Dr. Alexakos, who I know will keep the discussion lively and the discourse civil.
Thank you, Nancy. Each candidate will make an opening statement. The candidates that are unopposed will only make an opening statement. For the candidates that are not present, I will read their statement. Because we have only 2 candidates opposed on the podium this evening, we will use a slightly different format for the Senate candidates. There'll be still 2 types of questions. 1, questions to which the candidates will be given 1 minute to respond with a 30-second rebuttal for both candidates. And second, questions which require only a yes or no answer with a 10 seconds allowed for elaboration. Candidates will be given 1 minute for opening and closing statements. The order of the closing statements will be the reverse of the opening statements. Both candidates will be given an opportunity to respond to all questions. Each question will be directly initiated to one candidate. If that candidate opts not to answer the question, he or she loses the opportunity to respond further to that question. The order in which candidates are seated will set the order in which questions are asked and answered, with the order alternating between candidates. So we would like opening statements, please. Mr. Callahan.
Thank you very much. I'd like to, my name is James Callahan. I'd like to welcome everyone here to Narragansett as the Town Council President, and thank the League of Women Voters for having us tonight, and say hello to all the people at home tonight watching. And I want to welcome Senator Sosnowski and Mr. G. It's great to have you here tonight. I am running for office because I want to make Rhode Island a better place. For too long, our young people have been leaving our state for lack of opportunity. I've seen family and friends move out of Rhode Island because they could not find jobs. That has to end. We need to change the culture of our business community and our legislature. By enacting real ethics reform, we can start to show we are moving in an honest and right direction. From there, we can show other states and other businesses and our own citizens that we do mean business. We need to attract new businesses and make sure that our current businesses remain. As a prosecutor for the Department of Attorney General and president of the Town Council, I've made tough decisions that benefited all residents of Narragansett. For too long, we've let the issues of the day run past us without planning for the future. I have a young son at home. I want to make sure that in the future he has the opportunity to stay here in Rhode Island if he wants to, assuming he's not sick of us. So to make that happen, I ask for your vote on November 4th.
Mr. Gee?
Thank you. Do we do Pledge of Allegiance before this? Or?
Wasn't? No.
Okay. All right. Yeah, thank you. And thank you for your hospitality, James. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Mark G., and I can't tell you how disappointed and frustrated I am every time I pick up a newspaper or turn on the radio news to learn about some deal gone bad, some guy on the take, or some politicians who've broken their oath of loyalty to serve. We see the results. We're one of the highest cost states in the nation for citizens, taxpayers, businesses, government, and even dead people if they haven't already moved to Florida. It doesn't have to be that way. We've got thousands of smart, hardworking, honest, dedicated individuals who can lead, and leaders we need. I'd like to be one of them. I bring my experience as an independent thinker and doer, a naval Vietnam veteran, an IBM Corporation alumnus, a successful small business person for almost 40 years, a father of 7 and a bunch of grandchildren, a senior citizen, community service volunteer, and so forth and so on. Oh yeah, and a good husband and father when this is all over. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now read Senator Sheehan's opening statement. I wish to thank the League of Women Voters for the opportunity to address this forum tonight. I regret I was not able to attend. My name is Senator Jim Sheehan. I proudly represent Narragansett and North Kingston in the State Senate. I have called Rhode Island my home all my life. I live in North Kingston with my lovely wife, Meredith, and 3 wonderful children. I care deeply about the future of all our children along with our state. I seek re-election because I believe that it is only through civic involvement that we can truly make a difference in our community. We need elected officials with the experience, leadership skills, and principled determination to make the changes needed to move our state forward. I believe my record demonstrates that I possess these qualities. Indeed, I have been a strong advocate for good government, the economy, and quality of life issues in our state. For example, I co-sponsored separation of powers and sponsored greater access to public records. I also have sponsored legislation to overhaul the former EDC to make it more accountable and customer-friendly. I've been involved in preserving open space and our state's quality of life. There is still much work ahead. With your support, I will continue to focus on improving our state's business climate, making sure that government is a true partner in this endeavor. I thank you. I'd appreciate your support on election date. Sincerely, Senator James Sheehan. Ms. Sosnowski, please.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Sue Sosnowski, and I am seeking re-election to Senate District 37, representing South Kingstown and New Shoreham. My husband Mike and I have owned and operated Sosnowski Farm in West Kingston for 30 years. I have a strong work ethic, and I strive to get the job done. As a child, I observed and learned that helping others through community service is an American tradition and an expectation of citizenship. My father taught by example. In addition to his demanding accounting career, he sang at church, was a secretary of the Carolina Volunteer Fire Department for 28 years, and was on the Richmond Town Council for 18 years, and enjoyed doing income taxes for neighbors and friends. Throughout my years of community service as a former South Kingstown Planning Board member, an agricultural lobbyist, and as a state senator, I believe I have been an effective communicator and a proven consensus builder. It's been a distinct great honor to serve as a state senator for 18 years, and during this time I have worked hard for our communities. I humbly ask for your vote on November 4th, and I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this forum, and also thank Town Council Callahan for his hospitality this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. I'd like to read the opening statement from Dennis Algier. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters of South Kingston-Narragansett for inviting me this evening. Unfortunately, I'm not able to attend tonight's forum. It has been an honor to represent Senate District 38 for the last 22 years, especially the citizens of South Kingston. I have worked diligently to build strong relationships with public and private sector agencies to ensure that the people I represent receive the highest possible level of service. With your support, I hope to have another term, working to make Rhode Island a better place to live and work. We must continue our commitment to improving the state's economic vitality. This past year, I supported legislation to bolster Rhode Island's economy. Our state will continue to have far too many unemployed people unless we continue exploring ways to create and retain businesses. Our economic state affects everything in our lives, our jobs, our schools, our homes, and so much more. Rhode Island will not move forward unless we make the economy our #1 priority. I would like to take this moment before we start the questions to all stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Okay, here we go. I'm going to do this one. So the first question is going to go to Mr. Callahan. What? The General Assembly approved legislation in June that will increase the minimum wage in Rhode Island from $8 to $9 an hour. Despite opposition from some legislators who argued it would drive business from the state, do you agree with the increase? Should it be increased further?
I do agree with the increase. I think that any person who works either 35 or 40 hours a week should make a wage that can support their family. And I think that moving from $8 to $9 is a good step in that direction. I do support that. I know it has an impact on small business in some respect, but anyone who puts in an honest day's work for a full week should be able to support their family, and I support the increase in minimum wage. And I know a number of the candidates for governor supported an increase to $10, and I think that is on the horizon, so I would support that as well.
Thank you. Mr. Gee?
I would not support the increase at this particular time. We're still in an economy that's reeling and at the bottom of all the states in the country. I think if we can give business and workers the ability to make it and have businesses not have the burden of high cost, I would feel better about not having this at this particular time.
Thank you. Mr. Gee, what specific regulatory reforms would you immediately initiate?
Well, I think, there's so many different branches of government and so many things that are ripe for regulation. For example, there's a Newport tent company that was featured in the Sunday newspaper. They do business all over the state. They've got to go to each individual town and seek permits for setting up a tent. That's crazy and it's onerous, and especially when Massachusetts allows you to go online, take all the forms you need, download them, fill them out, and send them off. Why do we have to have 39 cities and towns with separate regulations? So there are a lot to be done in regulatory reform.
Thank you. James?
As an attorney, we work with a number of small businesses to try to get through the reforms. I have 2 clients. One is dealing with a municipality in the area who is facing onerous regulations for no apparent reason. They're just being almost driven out of business because of the town's regulations. Another business is facing an agency, a state agency, that's trying to make them buy something for their business, which is completely unnecessary. So that type of progress is just, it's not progress at all. We have to address these things and move forward. I'm sorry, do I have a minute or 30 seconds?
You have. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Gee, considering Rhode Island was ranked #1 in government benefit spending, which includes public pension plans, unemployment insurance, Medicaid, education, and temporary assistance to needy families, and also had the highest rate of people who experienced poverty in New England, 28th nationally, does the state spend too little or too much on social welfare programs? What would you propose to reduce the poverty rate? How would you reduce it, the poverty rate?
The poverty rate. Well, social services account for almost 40% of the Rhode Island state budget. 40%. That's the highest proportion of spending for any area. And I think that one of the things I would want to do is sit down and get together with other like-minded, fiscally conservative legislators and see if we could address that situation.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan?
I think one of the issues we do have in the state is the temporary disability insurance. I think we have the highest cost in the entire nation for that kind of service, and it is related to seasonal workers. So if we can find a way to change our laws so that it's not as expensive, we don't pay as much. I think we pay $50 million in insurance for $80 million in benefits. So that's a step in the direction we should take to lessen those costs, to make it easier to do business in Rhode Island.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan, did you support changes in public education like teacher evaluations and the use of standardized testing as a requirement for graduation made by Commissioner Gist? What changes would you like to see occur to improve public education?
I do support the Common Core standards. I think that testing to graduate from high school is an issue. But I do agree with testing overall because it measures us in a way that other things can't. I think Massachusetts is #1 in math and reading in the country. We're at the middle at best. And nationally, American students rank on the lower end of math, reading, and science. We need to change that. And by changing our education system, we can move in that direction. The Common Core gets a lot of criticism recently, but it is something that's driving us to get better. It's not perfect, and anything that begins is never going to be perfect at the beginning, but if we work towards better goals and use that system to help our students and improve statewide and then nationally, we can be the best school system in the nation. We're small, we should be able to turn on a dime and do better things for our students.
Thank you. Mr. Gee?
Thank you. Well, Deborah Gist is a combat veteran as far as I'm concerned. She arrived here, and although she has tried to make some real progress after Peter McWalter's reign, it has been difficult for her, first because of the kneecap situation, and secondly, the Common Core has its detractors. I think the Common Core is nothing more than an attempt to try to bring some uniformity into all the different curriculums in the state. I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan, New England governors, members of the congressional delegation, and other policymakers have placed a high priority on developing additional energy infrastructure. Do you support Spectra Energy's recent plan to widen 26 miles of natural gas pipeline and build an additional compressor station in Berryville? Please explain.
I do support every effort to find new ways to provide energy. The reliance on oil is hurting us internationally, statewide, and nationally. The Spectra system, if it can provide more natural gas to us in a cheap and economically feasible way, then I think it's something we can do. But we have to move towards higher technology, better systems. As all of you know, we faced that issue in Narragansett with deepwater wind. We addressed that at length through, it seems like, dozens of hearings with hundreds of people in the state, in the crowd here. That issue is different from this issue, but we have to move in a different direction. We can't rely on what we've done in the past, and only with new ideas and new energy sources will we be able to sustain ourselves in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Gee.
I think the Spectra Energy proposal is a good one. I know they've been before the Federal Regulatory Commission, and I don't know what the results of that are, but these pipelines and the ability to bring in additional amounts of natural gas are so important to our economy, if nothing else, because having readily available natural gas is going to lower our cost of doing business.
Thank you. Mr. Gee again. If elected, will you announce that you will hold public meetings to hear from your constituents during your term? If yes, how many meetings and approximately when? If no, how do you plan to stay in touch with what's concerning the residents of your district?
Public meetings?
Yes.
That's a joke. I think, you know, I love meeting people, and I love hearing what people are thinking and want and what concerns them. So I would definitely hold court, if you will, in all of the four regions of District 35, East Greenwich, North Kingstown, South Kingstown, and Narragansett, and I would be delighted to come here on a frequent basis, if necessary, more than normal, especially if there are issues that are locally relevant that could be addressed by a General Assembly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Callahan.
I think in this day and age, there's dozens of ways to communicate with your constituents, whether it's through Facebook, a website, Twitter, online provides hundreds of ways to do it, along with town hall meetings and scheduled meetings at libraries. As a senator, I would seek to do a meeting or town hall meeting once a month in each district, in each area, North Kingston, South Kingston, Narragansett, East Greenwich. I think that's the best way to get to people's ideas, going face to face, meeting them in person.
Thank you. Push your microphone closer. Mr. Gee, last year, the Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity lobbied for the elimination. Oh, Mr. What? Callan, did you rebut?
I did.
Yeah, he did. Oh, it's okay. Again.
I can do it again.
Sorry, it's okay. Last year, the Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity lobbied for the elimination of the 7% sales tax rate, arguing that the amount of economic activity generated from the move would more than make up for the estimated loss of $904 million in tax revenues. Would you support the elimination of the sales tax, lowering it, or keeping it the same, or increasing it?
Turn on the mic. the Market Fairness Act, which I guess Congress is going to consider, which has to do with whether or not states will receive sales tax revenue from the Amazons and so forth, which don't have a physical presence, but are that would automatically take it down to 6.5 if it were passed by the U.S. Congress. We first of all, we're, if not the highest, one of the highest in New England. And the question is, how do we make up the loss of sales tax revenue? I don't know. I don't have an immediate answer, but I like the idea of lowering taxes. So that's my fundamental principle and gut feeling, is we've got to start lowering taxes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Callahan?
Thank you. I think last year the state recouped somewhere around $904 million through its sales tax. We have to make up any loss of tax somewhere else. I think a better way to do it is to probably look towards a sales tax holiday like they do in Massachusetts, to encourage business to come here for a weekend or a month, to have people buy things, give them a break, but also keep the business in Rhode Island. I think that's a different way to do it, and I think we need to use our sales tax in a better way, for example, like Massachusetts does for a school funding formula for infrastructure purposes.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan, do you think there is wasteful spending in the state budget? Name specific examples.
The spending in the state budget is, it's a bear. It's $9 billion, and for some reason, even though we spend $9 billion, or take in $9 billion, our roads are crumbling, our bridges are falling apart, and our schools don't have a proper foundation. So somehow, we're taking in all this money, and we can't keep our bridges intact. We need to find ways to spend that money better, whether it's through a trust fund for increased funding towards those things, and we have to lift the moratorium on our school building projects. Those things will help our future. Our children, our schools, and our bridges have to be a priority for all of us in the next few years. We've neglected those things. We only do things month to month or year to year. We have to look to the future, and I would do an entire study on how we spend our money and how we can improve it and where we went wrong. If we don't find out what we did in the past, we're doomed to repeat those mistakes.
Thank you. Mr. Gee?
Would you do me a favor and repeat the question, please?
Yes, of course. Do you think there is wasteful spending in the state budget? If so, name specific examples.
Well, I can't imagine that our budget is perfect, and there's some stuff in there that shouldn't be there. I think we're spending a lot of money, and I'm not sure that we're getting the full benefit of what we're spending. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan, what do you see as the most promising solutions for improving fisheries in state waters and thereby the communities dependent on them?
As you know, Narragansett is one of the hubs for the fishery industry in the state and the region. We have to make sure, again, that our infrastructure is available and ready for when the ships come in, they can get their shipments out to where they have to go, whether it's Maine, New Jersey, New York, or California. We have to utilize Quonset as a shipping, train, and plane service for our fishing industry to make sure that we utilize all those things at the same time so that our fishing industry is supported. They are a lifeblood for Narragansett and for the region. We have to support them. We can't let Galilee just turn into a parking lot for Block Island. I know that's been the accusation sometimes, but with the new bulkhead in Galilee, and even, as silly as it sounds, the calamari bill, I know some of the people down at the town dock were thrilled that they could do a marketing scheme making calamari the state dish.
Thank you. Mr. Gee?
I'm going to pass on this one. I must admit I am not familiar with the fishing industry, and I will certainly learn something about it, I'm sure, but I have to be frank and tell you that is not an area of expertise for me.
Thank you for saying that.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Gee, another question, please. Experts predict water level rise and continued erosion along Rhode Island's South Shore, which would put critical infrastructure at risk. What should the state do about this?
I know that the state has the emergency management agency heavily involved in this question and this problem. I think we've got to balance protecting the infrastructure that's there with the environmental concerns of people. So, but that is definitely a problem that's got to be addressed.
Thank you.
The issue for beach erosion and sea level rise is crucial to Narragansett and South Kingston. That is one of the issues that is most important to the people of Narragansett. The beach, the town beach, is in danger. It's going to go under within, I think it's 40 or 50 years. We have to make changes, and as a senator, I would do everything I could to make sure that we get the sand, the dredging, whatever it takes to preserve that beach forever.
Thank you. Do it now? Rebut? No, we had a rebut. Okay. We're going to go to some yes/no questions. Mr. Callahan, would you vote to continue to pay the 38 studios moral obligation bonds, yes or no? And you have 10 seconds to elaborate.
At this point, I would continue to pay, but we need to pursue the lawsuit, and we need to study what the biggest risk is, whether it's to pay the bonds or if it's going to hurt us in the long run not to pay the bonds. We have to find that out before we can make that decision.
Thank you.
That's a tough yes or no question.
It is. Mr. Gee.
No. I definitely, I would call the insurance broker that sold us the $500,000 or $600,000 policy to protect the bondholders, and I'd say, come on over here and bring your checkbook, because now is the time.
Thank you. Mr. Gee, last session, the General Assembly failed to pass a bill that would lower the allowable interest rate on payday loans from 260% to 36%. Would you support that bill?
You know, this is an interesting question, because having spent some time in the Navy where you see the 3 for 5 and 5 for 7 deals where sailors somehow have a very difficult time holding on to the money that they've earned.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Mr. Callahan?
Would I support the lowering of the rate?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Gee, do you support redistricting done by an independent commissioner rather than the legislature?
No.
Okay.
Well, I think based on the district we're in right now, I think we have to take a better long look at that, because this district is very strange, and I would explore any possibility for redistricting.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan, in 2014, a bill was heard in the General Assembly which would require the Public Utilities Commission to review every purchase power agreement to ensure that the contract does not place an undue burden on ratepayers. Do you support such legislation?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Gee?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan, would you support open primaries in which a registered voter may vote in any party primary regardless of his own party affiliation, but must vote for candidates of only one party? That's what it's written. In other words, could a registered voter vote in any party, either Democrat or Republican, rather than just his party?
Well, I think we can do that, but you have to disaffiliate. Is that the question?
That's true. That's the question.
Yeah.
You can disaffiliate. You can disaffiliate. That's right. Yeah, so it's a mute question, I think, yeah. Just reading the questions here. Sorry. Number 6, Mr. Gee, would you support legislation that keeps those convicted of a domestic violence misdemeanor from owning or buying firearms?
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Callahan, yes. Okay. More? One more? 2 more. Mr. Gee, do you support a constitutional convention for Rhode Island?
Absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Callahan?
Well, I think that the legislature has the ability to make changes, and we should. And I think that with a new voice, we can make the changes we need to without a convention.
Mm-hmm. Good. Mr. Callahan, would you support statewide teacher contracts?
In some fashion, I would. I've never thought about that before, but I would consider it.
Mr. Gee?
Yes, I think that's an excellent idea. It can start off by being restricted to wages and benefits, and but boy, would that free up a lot of school committee times, and it would also have professional negotiators as opposed to
Thank you.
average
Can we
citizens.
respond to any of these things in more detail, since there's only 2 of us?
Yes or no? They're yes or no.
But is there
The 10 second.
is there an option that we can discuss things in more detail because there's only 2 of us? Or, I thought that was part of the rules. No.
No, I need a gong because I forget that it's 10 seconds, and being a politician.
More question?
I mean, you did say that you could do, on the 1-minute questions, you could do a 30-second rebuttal. So if the 2 of you would like to discuss one of the quick answer, yes or no or more, I think we know that's very short, but we're trying to get a lot of topics in. But if one of those you 2 would like to discuss some more, I each take 30 seconds, that's fine.
Yes, and then again, no.
Okay, good. I'm going to go back to some lengthier questions. And they're not yes or no. They're the minute and 30-second rebuttal. Okay, so we're starting with Mr. Gee. Do you support the Deepwater Wind Project and the higher utility rates imposed by it?
I am very much opposed to Deepwater's proposal and approval, and when you consider the $300 or $400 million extra that we will pay for electricity, that's drawing valuable resources away from other areas in our state where we need money.
Mr. Callahan.
We dealt with the Deepwater Wind Project as a council numerous times over last spring and summer. I think it is, in some respects, a boondoggle. It's going to cost ratepayers hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's just an example project. It's only 5 turbines. It doesn't make sense for Rhode Island. It doesn't make sense for the ratepayers.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan. In July, First Amendment advocates Access Rhode Island audited state and local governments that handle open records and found dozens of agencies violated Open Access to Public Records Act laws. The group advocated for the creation of an independent Freedom of Information Commission to oversee public record disputes. Would you support that? And what other measures would you recommend to create a more open and transparent government for its citizens?
Well, I don't think we need another commission to tell us how to regulate open meetings. I know in Narragansett they did the recent study, and the police department had a 100% rating, which is very impressive, and I think the town itself was not far behind. We just need to enforce the laws we have. Open government is the crux of our society. If we don't have that, we're pretty much doomed. And I think that the more open, the better. As the town council president, I think we, as a council, strove to limit the number of executive sessions we had. We did everything we could out in the open, and we limited the executive sessions to a minimum, only discussing issues that were, for that province. So if you can't get records cheaply and easily, then there are issues, and the Attorney General has to enforce those laws. And as a former Attorney General, I would make sure that happens.
Thank you. Mr. Gee.
Please, not another commission. We don't need any more commissions. I agree with Mr. Callahan on that score. I think it's too bad that we scored poorly in many communities for the access to open records. I do appreciate the fact that it's not a simple process, especially if the police are involved and they're suspects and other things. I don't know the technical and legal ramifications, but I think we've got to put renewed emphasis on
Thank you.
that problem.
Mr. Callahan, do you take contributions from political action committees or other special interest groups? Do you believe special interests have too much influence in the General Assembly?
I have taken, I think, 2 contributions from 2 firefighters groups. That was back in June. Basically, I think that the issue of money in campaigns is extraordinarily difficult proposition. You have to fund a campaign. It's expensive. I don't have the funds to drop a bunch of money into my campaign, but raising funds from individuals is hard. The economy is struggling. People don't have excess cash just to toss into a campaign. It makes it very difficult to, even on this level, to get your message out in a coherent and effective manner. So it is difficult to run a campaign without taking those kind of funds, unless you're self-funded, and I've tried to limit that at every step, but I have not made an effort to reach out to PACs and other lobbyists because I think it does muddy the waters.
Thank you. Mr. Gee.
It is crazy that it takes, even for a campaign, as much money as it does to try to put up a good fight. I would not, however, under any circumstances, regardless of how desperate I were, accept PAC money from any organization, period.
Thank you. Mr. Gee, do you support strengthening the Ethics Commission oversight of legislators' votes? If yes, what specific legislation would you propose?
Yes, I would. I would love to see, I think it was Senator Lenahan who a number of years ago had the foresight to put the legislators under the purview of the Ethics Commission to right a wrong that had been made earlier. Unfortunately, for his trouble, he lost his chairmanship of a committee, and we didn't see that legislation get enacted. So to net it out, yes, I think the Ethics Commission should have full jurisdiction over the General Assembly, and forget about the de novo hearings and all of this other stuff. I think it's we've got to do that.
Thank you.
ASAP.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Callahan.
To change the vision of Rhode Island and the reputation, we need to enact ethics reform. It's holding us back, whether it's the mayor of Providence race, whether it's ethics in the State House. Anyone who's running from the ethics reform has something to hide, and we have to end that. Those days have to be over. We need to move forward. Only then will business understand that we are playing on a fair playing field. And unless we enact that kind of reform, I know it's not a tangible thing, but it's very, very important.
Thank you. Mr. Gee, the General Assembly cut state aid to the University of Rhode Island by $13 million between 2007 and 2015, a 16% reduction. The state aid now contributes about 9% of the university's budget. Do you think this is sufficient? What would you do to increase it? Or what specific ideas do you have to allow the state to help them make up what they've lost without raising tuition rates?
Once again, I've got to be honest with you. I am not intimately familiar with the budget of the University of Rhode Island. I know that Lorna Drain, who was head of the Regents, wanted to implement a 3.5% salary increase. And while I followed the URI news in the paper, I don't have the specifics that I would need to see to figure out if their funding is fair or not.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan.
I think one of our goals should be to make URI, CCRI, RIC jewels of the state. We should make sure that those students at those schools are the best educated we can possibly make it. Funding for the school shouldn't be cut. Those kids need to be the backbone of our future. They need to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. URI has its own issues in Narragansett, but we still support them wholeheartedly.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan, Rhode Island lawmakers have been voicing concern about what state taxpayers will have to cover once federal funding for Health Source RI expires. Should Rhode Island continue to fund its own exchange or transfer it to the federal government?
Well, surprisingly, the health source system has actually been pretty successful in Rhode Island. It's one thing we've done pretty well over the past few years. And if we can find a way to export that to other states as a model, then I think that might be a way to recoup some of the funding that we're losing from the federal government. It's not an easy answer. It's expensive, but it's something we need to do and something we've done well. So I think we should capitalize on that as best we can.
Thank you. Mr. Gee.
This new medical program, the Affordable Care Act, is one of the most confusing, difficult to understand, not plain English programs I could ever imagine. And I can't tell you the time that my wife and I have spent trying to figure out if something is covered or something isn't covered. Should we go to the feds? I think I'm really concerned about the federal program, and I'm also concerned about the additional costs that we're going to face.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you. Sorry.
in the middle on this one.
Okay. Mr. Callahan. The Rhode Island Public Transit Authority is funded by the gas tax, but because gas prices are high, people drive less and are switching to more fuel-efficient cars, which means RIPTA's funding decreases. The Rhode Island chapter of the Sierra Club supports sending vehicle registration fees that currently go into the state's general fund to RIPTA to create a sustainable funding mechanism. But the bill has no traction in the General Assembly. Would you support it? If not, what do you suggest to be done instead?
Well, I always thought that the funding formula for RIPTA was very strange because the gas tax does pay for it, but the more people use RIPTA, the less gas taxes you get. So it doesn't make sense in a lot of ways, which I think is kind of common in Rhode Island for some reason. So I used to take RIPTA. I used to take the number 14 bus, number 66 bus to Providence. Once you get on it, it's great. You have to worry about traffic. You can read a book and enjoy yourself. I support RIPTA wholeheartedly. I think we do have to examine new ways to support RIPTA. It's not easy to support funding in a state like this because it's not an urban area. You don't have a subway or a train system that's convenient for everyone, but we do need to support RIPTA. As for specific funding, I'm not sure exactly how to do that yet, but I think we have a number of ways to do that, and we can address it in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Gee.
One thing you mentioned was sustainable funding. And sustainable to me means not only ongoing, but it means self-perpetuating without an outside influence. I think that RIPTA provides a great service. The question is, can we make that service self-sustaining by taking the revenues that they get from riders and using that and balancing that with other sources.
Thank you. Mr. Gee, Joseph Paolino has proposed adding table games and other improvements to Newport Grand. Do you support this expansion of gambling? With the casinos in Connecticut and Atlantic City struggling financially, how do you view the long-term economic impact of gambling on the state budget?
Duh. I don't mean that as a disrespect. I mean that it's the craziest thing that, and I can imagine. It just makes no sense whatsoever. As an original opponent of casinos in Newport, I'm sorry? Oh. As an original opponent of casino gambling in Newport when we first erected that monstrosity there, I cannot see the sense of even entertaining the idea. The good luck to Massachusetts and every place else that's got casinos going up. May you not suffer the fate of the 4 casinos in New Jersey. Let's get our spare time diverted into more realistic and more practical endeavors than throwing money away at a casino and creating all of the after effects that take place when people develop gambling problems.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan.
Well, I think that unfortunately, in some respects, gambling is here and is here to stay. Twin River is in the process, or does have table games. I think that Newport is a jewel, and seeing that slot machine sign when we drive over the bridge is ugly and terrible. But since Massachusetts is getting games, I think that the addition of table games to something we already have there is only going to increase revenues. So I think it's something we should definitely consider.
Thank you. Mr. Gee, the Rhode Island chapter of the Sierra Club says that residential renewable energy tax credit successfully incentivized over 100 small-scale renewable energy projects before it was discontinued in 2010. Would you advocate to bring it back? Why or why not?
Well, the first question I would ask is, why was it removed? And I would think that if it was removed, there was probably good reason for it.
Okay. Mr. Callahan?
Well, I think we have to explore every renewable energy source we can. I know that East Greenwich I think they banned wind turbines of a certain height in their town, which is certainly their prerogative. But in Narragansett, we have one down in Galilee, actually 2 in Galilee, and I think they're doing pretty well. It's not the solution, but it's certainly a step in the right direction.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan, how should Rhode Island measure the affordability level of its debt burden? What effect does this level have on the overall state tax burden and business climate?
Well, it's hard to answer that question simply, I think. At least, can you read that again?
Yes, of course. How should Rhode Island measure the affordability level of its debt burden? What effect does this level have on the overall state tax burden and business climate? So affordability level of its debt burden.
Well, I think that refers to our obligations in terms of bonds. And for this upcoming election, we have a number of bond issues. And to move forward, I think we do have to invest in ourselves and to address the tax rate and affordability. It's not easy to do in a 30-second answer, but we have to assess what debts we owe, what revenues we're bringing in, and look at them both together to see what we can afford in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Gee.
Thank you. I think the affordability issue, I saw a recent study that said that the Rhode Island was like 24th, and based on a per capita debt, I think it was like $4,000 per person. Wow, that's lower than I would have imagined. But the point is that the affordability of Rhode Island is terrible. We're almost the highest cost state in everything you look at, property taxes, state government, business taxes, all of that. So, yeah, we've got to do something about that.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan, we're back to our yes and no questions. We only have about 4 more. So, do you support legalized marijuana?
Yes, for medical purposes.
Mr. Key?
I support non-criminal, decriminalizing it, yes.
Okay. Mr. Gee, do you support the current abortion laws in Rhode Island?
Yes.
Mr. Callahan?
Yes.
Question 11. Mr. Gee, question 4 asks for $125 million to construct a new College of Engineering building at URI and undertake supporting renovations. Do you support this bond initiative?
Ouch. I do, but it pains me to think of the expense when all is said and done.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan?
Yes, we have to move forward in engineering, technology, and those areas to make ourselves a better state.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan, our last question. Last session, the General Assembly failed to pass a bill that would have ensured children and youth in foster care to have the right to continue to attend the school district where they resided prior to entering the foster care system. Would you support that bill?
That's an extremely difficult question because I've dealt with DCOF and foster care children and child support issues in court as an attorney. These kids are shipped from how?
Did you want to
Is this a
discuss
rebuttal?
that?
Is
No.
this, this is the 10 seconds. I'm sorry.
Yes, no.
I thought this was the last question overall.
Yeah,
I apologize.
No, sorry. Yes.
Oh,
Please
okay,
finish.
It's just a difficult thing. These kids are shipped from house to house to town, and I know they'd like to stay in the school district that they're in, but it's extremely expensive and extremely difficult to do in logistically.
Thank you. Mr. Gee?
I agree with Mr. Callahan.
Thank you very much. Okay. Here we are. Where am I? I have something to say here. A reminder at the end of the Senate candidates. What? Oh, excuse me. Closing statements. Mr. Gee, you have the first closing statement. Thank you. Where is that?
Thank you, League of Women Voters, the town of Narragansett, fellow panelists, and everyone here in the audience. Let's lay it on the line. We live in the ocean state. It's the best when you're on top of the water, but we're underneath the water now, and it's the government that's holding us there. We need people in the General Assembly and government who understand and live business, who run businesses, which drive the economic engines we need to get our employment and economy back on track. It's going to take leadership, teamwork, patience, foresight, time, a spirit of cooperation, and an iron will to make it happen and follow through. Decisive leadership and imagination. The status quo must go. Rhode Island government is broken, and we need honest, ethical, real leadership to fix it. That's why I'm here. Let's go, sports fans. Let's get to work.
Thank you. Mr. Callahan.
For too long, we've neglected our future of our great state. We've mortgaged our future on bad bets. At the same time, we let our taxes run high while our infrastructure crumbles. The days of short-sighted decision-making and insider politics has to change. As president of the town council and the council together, we made great strides for the betterment of the town. We addressed huge financial shortfalls, saving the town $42 million in OPEB benefits, and we improved the quality of life for our residents. And we did that collaboratively. I want to do the same with the State House. We need a new generation of leadership that is willing to make decisions for today and for tomorrow. The popular decision is not always the best decision. Tough decisions are made by true leaders who are willing to take risks and do what is right for the entire state. I'm running because I think we can make a difference. We can move Rhode Island forward so our children have the opportunity to stay here if they choose to do so. And that's what I want, an opportunity for all of our children. for too long that's been missing. Through intelligent reform, a new way of doing business, and strong ethics legislation, we can get Rhode Island back on the right track. Thank you again to the League, Mr. G, and I ask you for your vote in November. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all the candidates tonight. I'd like to say that please stay tuned for the House candidates at 8 p.m. tonight. A reminder at the end of the forum to attend the Meet of the Candidates Night for South Kingston School Committee and Town Council Wednesday, October 8th, and Meet the Candidates Night, the Narragansett School Committee and Town Council on Tuesday, October 14th. All events will be here held at the Narragansett Hall starting at 6:30 on those dates. Thank you.
Thank you.